Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining us today. I'm Kim.
Not bad.
And I'm Zach.
And we're from Hungerford Technologies. And we want this to be really interactive today. So make sure you're logged into whatever platform you're watching this on today. If you're on Facebook, you need to be logged into Facebook. If you're on YouTube, make sure you're logged into YouTube. And if you're on our website, you'll need a Twitch account to comment. But we want this to be really interactive. If it has to do with the topic today, or if you have any other questions, don't wait till the end. Comment right away.
Yeah, be lively. So every Wednesday at 1 o'clock Eastern time. Last week was Pacific time, and that's okay. But this week it's Eastern time. We go live because a lot of organizations need this. They need to host virtual meetings. They need the ability to host virtual events. Hint, hint. Especially right now with the climate that we're in. And so today, we as a group are going to have a conversation about virtual events and these topics. So this episode will be a little bit different. It'll be a little bit more conversationally-ist led. We kind of talked about this before with each other, so we kind of want to give you our thoughts, but we're going to cover a couple different topics today. We're going to cover what was the purpose behind your virtual event and why you might be, or the purpose behind your physical event, why you might want to go virtual. How do you keep people interested? What's in it for them now? Kind of like budgetary reasons, issues that you might come across. And then how do you start to recreate the event itself? We have a lot of topics. We have a lot of things to go over. And Ben is going to start us off. So go ahead, Mr. Ben.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Zach. Every time you speak, it just gives me a little bit of goosebumps. So appreciate that. So basically what we wanted to go over with everyone was, recreating a physical event in a virtual environment. And what are the steps that you take? And how does that look? So to start things off, one of the biggest things that we wanted to cover was, really diving into what was the purpose of your original event and how can I take what I was doing in that physical event and transition it into a virtual environment. And so we just kind of had a little bit of a couple different bullet points, and then we just kind of wanted to talk through some of those different things. So some of the main ones though, customer retention, customer appreciation, we have multiple different examples of that where people are coming to an actual physical event. You got food, you got people coming out to mingle and talk with other people. And then, how do we do that virtually and how do we make that make sense? Then you got town halls, board meetings, trainings, and lead generation type events. So whatever your type of event is that you are doing physically in a physical space can be done virtually. And then the question becomes, how do we do that? And so that's kind of what we wanted to just kind of discuss and go back and forth and just kind of talk through. So, Kim, I think you've been to multiple different physical events. And so what are some of the things that you've seen that have made them successful and that potentially you're missing in, a virtual meeting?
One of the things that I've found is trade organization events. You get a lot of the networking. I work for Hungerford Technologies. We don't have a marketing team of 20. So, you get to go meet other marketers, have, some of those dinners, some of the networking events, those sorts of things. When we go to trade shows, you miss that time one-on-one with customers, some of those sorts of things that are difficult yet not impossible to recreate in a virtual event. So.
Sure, and that's a good example. We just kind of wanted to go into those. I mean, obviously, everyone's going to be hosting a different type of event. So a lot of the questions that we ask when we're getting into these types of conversations with customers is, what is the length of the event? And then the reason that we ask that question too is mainly because we want to know, is the content that you guys are going to provide in that physical event, can we transition it accurately into a virtual event? And are there pieces that we might need to be cutting out or condensing or minimizing into a lower time frame, or do we need to split it up into multiple events? So there's a lot of those kinds of things that you need to think about and need to consider when doing it. So how many hours is the event going to be? Is it going to be a single day? Is it going to be multiple days? Are you going to have a series of events? What's the length? And there's more that goes into that than just how many hours and how many days It's, am I going to be able to provide an engaging enough amount of material to the people that are attending this? And what's that going to look like? And then another thing that we talk about is size, and why does this matter? And get a couple chuckles there. If you're having a smaller event, and this is kind of the only thing that we're going to talk about today as far as a platform, but when we talk about different types of events, we're going to go switch and share my screen here, and I'm going to kind of show you the differences between the different solutions. Not everyone is going to host their virtual event in Webex or some people might be hosting it in another platform, but for today's purposes, I just kind of wanted to show the differences of the different Webex solutions. So if I'm meeting with 3 or 4 people like we are today, I probably don't need to have an event inside of training or events, and it might be more advantageous for me to meet inside of Webex meetings. Obviously, there's going to be different things that I have to take into consideration. Webex meetings is a lot more collaborative. We can have conversations, we can unmute and mute each other, and it kind of gives us a lot of freedom. Like if we were all in the same room, we could speak whenever we want to. If we're sitting around a table, we can talk and discuss. Where when we switch into Webex training and Webex events, there's differences. The training solution is a lot more so used for training events and live instructors grading, scoring, instant feedback, being able to break out into breakout rooms. And then the events platform on the flip side is used for larger scale webinars or conferences and those types of solutions. But the biggest difference between them is also in the size is between, if I'm meeting with smaller groups, I have to look at what are our goals, what are we trying to accomplish? And then when I move up into the 1,000, we're having up to 1,000 people range, what do I want to control in those sessions, and what do I want to control in that environment, and what are my outcomes that I'm trying to obtain? And then when I get up into that, a lot of times training and events make a lot more sense because I have a lot more control over the audience in what they're able to do, see, communicate between the different presenters, but it also gives me a lot more control over how we control the presenters as a host or moderator, and making it feel much more polished too as a virtual event, and much more similar to my physical event. If we get up above 3,000 and we get up above 1,000 and we get up into 3,000 range, then you're going to be looking more at like Webex events, and that is more of a live stream type. You can push that out to Facebook or somewhere else too, and tie that in that way. But then you're really broadcasting to a very, very large group, and you might have several presenters. You might have an auditorium or a panel or a board, several board members. And then once we get above that into the 3,000 plus range, they have what's called Cisco Webcasting. And Cisco Webcasting is basically anything above 3,000 attendees requires a Cisco moderator who's there, to help set up the event, is there for technical support, and is required. So depending on how many hours that event is, and depending on how many attendees above that 3,000 mark, that'll determine the pricing there too. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen here and just get back to the regular question or the regular presentation here.
I think one thing to note about all of this, because you're talking about, and people are probably already starting to think about these ideas. Man, I can think about the length. I have an idea of how long I want my event to be. The size, well, I can ballpark a size pretty well. It's going to be easy to do that. But unlike a physical meeting, I can be on my phone during a virtual meeting. I could be on a different screen on my virtual meeting. And I think that's something that you as a viewer should take into consideration is how do you keep people interested in the meeting? And there are a couple different ways you can do that. I know from my personal experience, I've been with Hunger for Tech for a little over 6 months. It's my first office job. I transitioned from the retail life of working at one company to coming into Hunger for Tech. And you guys, Kim and Ben, have a ton of experience at conferences. We have some people that also have experience in conferences. You know, they do a pretty good job of keeping you entertained, number one. They do a pretty good job of keeping you interested most of the time, I'm sure. But they also give you a reason to be there. Do you guys want to name a couple things that you've experienced, like that have drawn you to physical events? And then maybe we can say how we can do them in virtual events, because we have some ideas, but they might be different.
Yeah, absolutely. Kim, if you wanted to start, it looked like.
So there are a few different reasons. I mean, that goes kind of back to what the goals of the event are. Is it content? Is it learning? Is it continuing education? Is it getting to hear from experts in your profession or on a specific topic? I mean, we've all gotten the cool swag bags, though. Those are great. You know, the dinners, the, you know, cocktail hours, some of those sorts of things. So.
Yeah, and Kim brings up a good point. So a lot of times, one of the biggest things that comes up when we talk about this is, well, I can't do anything with food, and most people just come because they want to eat the good food that we either bring in or the places that we take them. And so we've done a lot of research on this, and we've found some unique strategies that you could use potentially to get a similar experience. So, I mean, everyone's heard of like something like Grubhub. So you could either, you know, send them a Grubhub gift card and they could get whatever they wanted, or you could actually go through Grubhub and send people individually, you know, a similar setup and a similar spread to what you would normally provide at the physical event. You know, you could do gift cards to different restaurants, those types of things. A lot of times too, people ask about like, how do I recreate the experience that I have, you know, bumping elbows with someone, or, you know, dapping them up, giving them a cool handshake, and maybe you're a hugger. Maybe you like to give hugs. That's a little bit harder to recreate. But what we found is a lot of times what we can do is we can set up a main event, and then we can also set up separate sessions so that you have separate personal meeting room sessions where you can still have that kind of face-to-face interaction. And maybe you can give someone a virtual fist bump, you know?
There you go.
I know it's not the same, but there are creative strategies that you can use to have similar experiences in virtual as opposed to being in front of people in a physical environment and actually being able to shake their hand and actually being able to eat, you know, food that I think is, especially during these times. I mean, none of us have to wear a mask while we're on one of these virtual meetings. So there's some pros too that come out of this. And then, I mean, Zach, you were talking about a couple other ways to, you know, the what's in it for me and to attract people.
Yeah, and you know, as a younger person, I'll phrase it that way. You know, if you know, Amazon gift cards are a great thing to do. Exclusive content, like Kim said, grab bags, swag bags, all these ideas. Like, there are ways that you can put these into your meetings. For instance, personal story. My mom texted me today. She's a librarian. She teaches all these little kids and their parents how to do like schoolwork from home. And she's like, "Hey, I'm going to send you a bingo card. And while I'm telling a story, the kids have to fill out the bingo, and whoever wins gets it." And that I was like, oh, that's really cute for kids, but that can be implemented across the board. Honestly, if you wanted to have fun with it, if you wanted to bring some fun into an event, or if you said, hey, for a bonding time, we have X, Y, or Z available. We even have like a possible game that's free. There are a lot of ways to tie in like what's in it for your customer, what's in it for your client, to bring them in or to make it a little bit more lucrative to want them to be there. Once again, I'm thinking about the people watching, and I know what you're thinking. We don't have the budget for this. We can't do this. We don't have the money. I'm gonna call an Ace and Ace. You had the budget for a physical event. Why can't you use that for a virtual event? Again, I haven't been to a conference. You guys are probably more likely to speak on this, but what does that look like? You know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And one thing, I mean, a lot of times when we think about switching from a physical event to a virtual event, a lot of times people think that it is less valuable, which isn't necessarily true. And I can, we've already talked about different things that we can do in a virtual event that we can simulate experiences that we'd have in a physical event. And a lot of times the things that come up too are, there's different ways that you can not only monetize it, or we can look at different strategies that we can do. Everyone should have an email list. Hopefully they have an email list. A lot of times we can send, email blasts to the customers that we have on our list to try to draw up interest. If we have a Facebook page, or if we have other social media, that plays into it. And a lot of that stuff can be done for free to attract people. But you also, if you had a marketing budget for your physical event, should still be able to take some of that and put it towards marketing the event virtually. And maybe a couple different strategies, but some of the same things come into play when marketing for a virtual event that you think about when you're doing a physical event. Other thing too to think about too is a lot of times when you have a physical event, if it's in a location where people have to drive or fly or book hotels, car rentals, all that kind of stuff too, think about how much those people are saving. You might be able to even get more people to your event if you're hosting it virtually, as opposed to having an in-person event where, someone's kid was just born, and so I have to be at home. Maybe that person now can hop on a Webex and, attend your virtual session and be like, oh, this is awesome. Like I can be on mute too here, so the kid's not crying over the speakers, all of that. Or, our boss, Matt, was saying he did a virtual distillery tour.
Which is so cool.
Yeah, which is awesome. And they sent him samples. So as they went through the virtual tour, he was able to try the different samples, and they were able to talk about, this is this, and these are the ingredients in it, and you'll notice these flavors, which is an awesome thing. And I'm a big bourbon guy, so you could do something similar like that with bourbon, or even, thinking about other creative strategies around things that you like or that your customers are into and like. I'm trying to think of other things to that.
Yeah, I was going to say, notice how Ben didn't think of anything else. He was a one-track mind. He knew exactly what he wanted. But yeah, I mean, changing your budget to fit the needs of a virtual event are really nice. There are also other considerations to take into thought. Are you using the right technology? Do you have the right infrastructure to do so? You might be the marketing director of a great company, but you live in the middle of the country where your internet's not that good, where your computer is great, but you're the one hosting. That's going to be a little bit more tedious for the people watching because you're the host. And if your internet isn't capable of hosting all of that, it's not going to be what you want. You're going to have a little bit less of what you need because the quality of your event isn't going to meet what you're desired. And just because, like Ben said, just because it's virtual doesn't mean it's free or less valuable. Virtual events do cost. Webex, at the end of this, we'll plug, you can get a free trial of Webex, but this software isn't just something you can pick up and go. I'll mention Zoom, for instance. When all of the COVID started, my parents wanted a Zoom meeting to see how all their kids were doing. And it has X amount of hours that you can be on there for. I think it's either X amount of hours or X amount of people. We reached the limit really quick, and it was like, well, what do we do now? Do we buy it? No, we're not going to buy it. We only did this one time. We're fine. So there is more things to think about when the budget is talked about, because there are more needs than just, oh, how do I send somebody a $10 gift card? You have to have the infrastructure to be able to host what you want before you host it. And then the final question that we have written down is probably the biggest one. How do we recreate the event? How do you recreate the event? We have a couple things written down. Ben, Kim, do you guys want to bounce any ideas that you have? Opinions
on the virtual meeting? What tools should you use?
Yeah.
You wouldn't have 150 people try and come to your boardroom. So, like Ben talked about before, make sure you have the right tool for the number of people who want to attend. You have to think about those same sorts of things. You can't fit only so many people in, or what are time limits and those sorts of things. So I think that's important. Do you need breakout sessions?
Yeah.
event planners. There's lots.
Yeah, and a lot of these things too, and one thing too, I was going to mention too, and Zach was going through some of that stuff too, is when you're looking at budget too, can I monetize the event, and is the content that I'm putting out good enough where I can actually charge people to come to my event? And if I was charging people before for the physical event, can I also then charge people to attend this event virtually? And maybe it's not as much. Maybe it's an incremental amount compared to what you charge for the physical event, because you're not having to pay for food and some of those other things, or presenters' flights and all of that to come out to the actual event. So those are another thing too, when you're recreating the event, to think about. And if you're also thinking about your budget, thinking about what are some other clever strategies that I can use to get all of the pieces that I want to come together in that virtual event. And then another thing too is when you're recreating the event, some of the things that we get asked all the time are, do I need an event planner? Do I have a budget for that? What are some strategies that I can come up with in that area? Do I have someone on my team who can do some of these things? Do we have technical support on our team that is going to not only understand the technology and be able to answer attendees' questions as they hop on, or do we need to also hire someone like our firm who specializes in this to come on there and moderate your sessions and handle any technical questions, help you set up the event, and help you with some of those additional roles? Maybe come in there and do I need an MC? There's just a couple other things in there too, Zach, if you wanted to kind of highlight those.
Yeah, and these are things that we thought of as a group, which was really nice, because we all have different experience levels. With Webex meetings and with other meetings apps, with other event apps, you could most likely do polling. So you could say like, hey, what do you want the next topic to be, A, B, or C? And the contestants, the clients, the people there can vote on what they want to see next. And that's something that's really nice, to have the ability to choose your directions, play your own paths, that kind of a thing. You can survey people. So, with Ben mentioned earlier, with teaching events, with education events, you can survey and say like, how many are interested in X, Y, or Z? Do you have preferences on this? A big thing about virtual events is, how do you keep your client's eyes on the screen? So you can't see my hands moving. My hands are moving all the time. I'm that kind of person. But playing a video on the screen, having animations go on the screen, having different things show up on the screen that are visually appealing to keep the user's eyes on the screen and not on Instagram, TikTok, or Facebook is the biggest thing that you want for your event. You don't want people dozing off or looking around. You want to keep them focused. And all that takes is a quick YouTube search to see how videos are made, or to see how hosts host TV, or even TED Talks. Events like that are things that you can reference to see, hey, how do they keep people stimulated and motivated during the event? And finally, I think one of the biggest things is a rehearsal. You might think, wow, Hungerford Tech, you guys do this without a hitch. Everything is perfect. I can't believe it. That's not true. We appreciate the flirtatious spirit of yourself, but we rehearse a lot. We practice. We make sure that what we're saying and how we're saying it kind of lines up. And if you have a host who can't do that, or if you have somebody who's not confident in that, that's okay. You can get somebody else to help out. You can get somebody else to do it. They might not know the event or the topic perfectly, but a script helps and topics help that they can cover. And then finally, you can always record the event. You can play it back. Like Ben said earlier, people have kids, people have things going on in their lives. If you have a live event recorded, what they can do is they can go back and play back that event. They can review it. They can pause it and be like, wow, Ben made a really good point right there. Oh, Kim has been to conferences. Let's hear her opinion again. Replay it, re-listen to it. These are all things that physical meetings, you don't really have the capability of doing. So there are some benefits to virtual meetings and virtual events.
Yeah, and a lot of times those things actually will cost you more money too if you are doing them in a physical event too.
Yeah.
So that's another thing to think about.
Yep.
Sorry to cut you off there, Zach.
No, you're fine.
What I was going to say, ladies, don't flirt with Zach though. He's a married man.
I'm a married man. I appreciate it though.
But yeah, to kind of wrap things up though, we're more than happy to kind of sit down with you guys and have conversations about events that you were previously holding in a physical space, and how do we recreate those virtually. and go through the process of the steps that it takes, and give you ideas and kind of just go back and forth and give you options of how to recreate that, things that you should keep, things that you should maybe consider getting rid of, or how you can even recreate those things.
Because it's not the easiest thing in the world to do, but it's more than less doable. You can definitely do it. Awesome.
Yeah,
I think we would all
absolutely.
agree with that. So
Yep.
Awesome. Well, if you don't have virtual meeting capabilities or like virtual event capabilities, you can always reach out to us. If you want a free full trial of Webex, you can reach out to us here at Hungerford Tech. If you already have Webex and you have more questions about getting started or possibly help with it, you can again reach out to us. I know you're curious about where you can reach out to us at. It's at our email is info@hungerford.tech, or you can just go to hungerford.tech and fill out the form on our website, and we'll reach back out to you. One of us will, one of us might. You never know. It's kind of a grab bag. But we appreciate you for watching today. Thank you for listening. You can always replay this back on our website. And as always, we appreciate it.
Thanks for your time.